fish head, roly-poly fish head, eat 'em up, yum. It's the crossover collaboration you've been waiting for. REviewAnew and Going Off are going in and reviewing over. I didn't plan this far.
Going anew.
Yeah, we're going anew.
Review Off.
It's the.
That sounds like a contest.
Yeah, actually, it's the Fairly Odd Parents and Jimmy Neutron collab.
Can we get like a?
Didn't that happen? What's the two shows that had like a collab episode movie on Nickelodeon or something? I could have sworn it was specifically Fairly Odd Parents and Jimmy Neutron because I remember seeing the style of Jimmy Neutron. Yeah.
That sounds right.
Yeah, like I feel like I was out of like watching shows at around those shows at around that time because like when I look back on my timeline, I always see like I stopped watching stuff sooner than I thought I did. Like with Pokemon, I stopped playing it sooner than I thought I did. I stopped playing it by like 11 or 12. I stopped watching Nickelodeon like around like 2002, 2003. And so I realized like, oh yeah, like that show that like by the second or third like season of SpongeBob, like I was off of it. And like same goes for like Fairly Odd Parents after like the first two seasons. Like after that, it's just like, no, I was either on Cartoon Network or I'm watching MTV music videos or something.
Stuff is for younger kids than we think about. Like my 6-year-old was playing Minecraft today. I walk in the room and he was playing Minecraft and like handling it pretty well and navigating. And I was like, what, who taught you to do this? When he, okay.
I guess if your brain like likes the patterns and it starts doing it, then it does it. Yeah.
RC, you were thinking of the Jimmy Timmy Power Hour, which was in fact a Jimmy Neutron Fairly Odd Parents 3-part crossover. So you are correct, sir.
Yeah, but I think that was like right out of the time where I was like interested in
the first one was 2004. The last one was 2006. 2004. So it was like a one a year thing.
Yeah, I feel like 2003 was like right as I like I saw it that it was happening, but it didn't excite me because I'm already watching Futurama on, you know what I'm saying, like and whatever other probably Family Guy.
You caught it out of the corner of your eye.
Right. And I wanted to make that reference earlier to the Fishhead songs because based technically on the movie that we're talking about today, but I didn't want to actually reference a piece or work by Andrew Lloyd Webber because he sucks. But also because that melody, a lot of people say is similar to the what's that song from Music of the Night on Phantom of the Opera? They say it's similar to the Fishhead song.
Fishhead sounds like music.
Yes.
Wait.
It's the part in the middle of the verse. It's like the part where it's nighttime sharpens, heightens each sensation. It's like slightly.
Nighttime sharpens, heightens each sensation.
Fishheads,
there you go. But we're not talking about Phantom of the Opera.
That's right. We're talking about something even weirder.
Phantom
of the Paradise. That's right. I keep having to go like because I feel like I'm mixing like two movies every time I want to say the name of the movie.
Well, this movie is a mashup of a few things.
Absolutely.
You've got Phantom of the Opera and Faust and The Picture of Dorian Gray and Birds and
in a really like absolutely retroactive way, Interstellar 555. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, not offhand.
Like, I was just thinking in the fact of, like, retroactively, like, okay, so this movie has, like, the big bad guy who kind of looks like Phil Spector. Like, even my not rock music knowing ass, as soon as I saw him, I was like, oh, that's Phil Spector looking ass. Ain't that supposed to be, and in the Interstellar 555, there's also, like, a big bad music producer guy who clearly is Phil Spector because he is the bad guy of music.
There's a point at which there are singers in Kiss makeup. They look like Kiss.
Absolutely.
But it was before Kiss had really gotten off the ground.
It was before?
Well,
because I was like, that's so particular, and especially to the idea of them doing, like, the outlandish stage shows, and I'm like, ooh, they're making fun of them, like, right as they're coming up, because it's 74, right?
It might have been that somebody was just that hip and had seen this, like, little-known band and was referencing them, but it was also a reference to the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, and there's a reference to Psycho, that's pretty, there's a lot of references, but, Yeah, maybe we should back up. This is Brian De Palma.
Oh right, yeah. So today we've decided to say F it and do a crossover review and have all these three voices coming at you at one time. RC, you know me, in the place to be, and we got my man Evan over here, and we got Buttress Mues coming to us in North Carolina. So we decided to do it for the people, to review this crossover like idea. I think musicals are kind of like the best crossover idea, right?
Yeah. Then we've got the movie and the music.
Exactly. So today we're reviewing, Brian De Palma's Phantom of the Paradise from 1974, a movie that, so on the REviewAnew podcast, in general, we take Ko-fi requests, but also Evan had said to me, like, how about we do one of our own, like, just a movie that we want to do, and I was like, oh, all right, and he just brought up Phantom of the Paradise. He specifically wanted to do that one. I was like, okay, like, I literally never heard of it before, so I was just like, and he showed me a scene that was like really interesting, so I was like, okay, I want to see what the rest of this looks like, and
I remember. Oh, hold on. I'm sorry. Let me backtrack. I never seen it before this week. Getting me to watch a movie is kind of hard these days, just with like timing and whatever. But to do a podcast episode about it is a pretty good way of twisting my arm. The first time I ever heard of this movie was thanks to another reviewer, old Diamanda Hagen.
Oh, yes. Shout out to Diamanda.
Right in her wheelhouse.
Yes.
But I always thought it looked very, very interesting, and everything about it sounded cool. The aesthetic was very intriguing. Brian De Palma, never one of my faves.
Yeah,
only because I've only seen a couple movies. I liked Carlito's Way. I remember that. I remember on Going Off. We've talked about Scarface a few times. And how, I don't know. It might not have aged the best. Might be one of the more overrated from the 80s.
Yeah, and as someone who grew up on Italian mobster movies because my mom was really into them. Godfather's the best and all that sort of stuff. Like that one was always the one that I never really remembered hearing about that much. So it was just kind of like, oh yeah, there's Goodfellas and Godfather and then there's the Scarface one. But then you kind of look at hip hop and it's like, whoa, everyone likes Scarface?
Obsessed.
Okay,
He also did Carrie though, so we got to give it up for that.
Okay, that is true. That's true. Got to give it up for that one. All right, but he's mainly known
there's this.
Yeah, and he's mainly known for doing thrillers and weird stuff. I saw he did a movie called Dionysus in *69, which is this weird I didn't watch it, but I had seen something about it being a split screen live action showing of this avant-garde band or something troupe or something like that. And it was one of those weird sort of whoa, only a gutsy artsy type director would take on something like this. And it was that's kind of interesting. And then in this movie there's a scene where there's a long split sequence.
There's a lot of split scenes.
Yeah. And so I was this must be his Spike Lee calling card thing here.
Yeah, it's definitely a favorite technique of his, and the split scenes really reward multiple viewings because you can't really fully appreciate what is going on in both sides at the same time.
Yeah, it overloads you in an interesting way.
I just looked up Dionysus in '69. First of all, I love that this is so that the performance group's name in the movie is literally The Performance Group, and it stars William Finley, star of Phantom of the Paradise. What a crossover!
Wow.
Right.
I might have to check that out.
Yeah. I haven't seen that one. I found out something last night doing some reading that the record company, the production company in the movie is called Death Records.
Death Records.
Which
very subtle, guys.
Which I realized I feel dumb, but I didn't realize until my repeat viewing last night that I was oh wait, that's a pun. Death Records, I get it. But also, it was apparently a last-minute change because it was supposed to be called Swan Song. Because he's Swan.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Swan
yeah.
Song. And then...
which also relates to death, right?
Oh, that's Zeppelin, isn't it?
And then the manager of Led Zeppelin started a record company called Swan Song.
Swan Song.
At exactly the same time, and sort of just beat the movie by a few months, and so they had to scramble at the last minute and change everything to say Death Records.
So already this movie's in competition with the music of the time.
Yeah.
I really love the logo they used for the record label, though. Like, I literally...
Yes.
I really want a Death Records shirt.
Like, just the way it unspools, like, just the way the movie starts, just to get into it.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
it looks like a freaking Twilight Zone episode at the
Yeah.
end. Like, someone talking about what's happening. And you see...
It's very Hitchcock.
Yeah, you're seeing an image, like, that's really close up, but, like, getting further away as it's swirling, like, in your face onto the screen. And you're saying, like, oh, it's like a bird, and it specifically looks like it's a dead bird, you know? Like,
yeah, and
the
Hitchcock references are sprinkled.
Yeah. But yeah, so we get into the movie proper, which is, like, basically it starts off with they set it up in the intro, basically saying, like, you know, this is the story of like what a man's music, a beautiful woman who sang it, and the monster who tried to take it from her, something like that. You know, doing the classic setup of, like, oh, you thought the monster is this guy, but the monster is actually, you know, I think we were about to learn who the real monster is as we watch this film.
And it frames Swan. We see Swan right in the first scene where we just kind of see it from his perspective. When we're seeing his hand. And
yeah,
so
it's such a... no, I was just, like, immediately thinking, like, it's so aesthetically, like, this movie is so, like, what's that word?
It's bold.
Stylistic,
yeah,
like, looking,
very,
but, yeah, go on what you were saying,
very stylized. And,
with the intro.
There are things, there's a bit of a red herring or a mislead at the top, because you got his henchman, Philbin, is talking to him about some pop star that they made, and then she cut the contract with them.
And she thinks she's some fuddy-duddy good girl now, and she's going to be nice to people. And so we think,
like, oh, this is going to have a major role to play, and it turns out, nope, has nothing to do with the plot of the movie.
That was just the last pop star he used, you know? But yeah, it takes place, like, you see this first-person perspective through him, and, like, the filming guy is just, like, looking at him and telling the whole story of, like, the background of, like, yeah, this is what that chick had to do. And as you, like, you see through his perspective, you can see, like, him, like, you know, like, on his knees in front of in front of Swan, and then you can also see, like, him being able to see out throughout this, like, really huge stage that he kind of presides over, and, like, all these people that are, like, you know, it starts off with, like, someone singing a song, like, you know, singing for him, his group, what was the Juicy Fruits. Yeah, and then pans up to him from his perspective watching them.
The Juicy Fruits, it's interesting sort of what happens, because we see several different bands and groups throughout that are all the Juicy Fruits. Yeah. And sometimes they're maybe supposed to, like, the original people are supposed to be dead, but we just see them again, and it's, like, clearly the same people, but maybe supposed to be different characters. But it's interesting the way that, I also, there's a point later where I think the actor who plays Beef appears as another character very briefly, so... but yeah, there's a lot of interesting sort of theatrical, stylized conventions happening where we see actors playing multiple characters and multiple bands, and it doesn't overtly draw too much attention to them, I don't think, to the fact that they're the same actors, but it's neat.
Like, there's something about the fact... go on.
It's like the movie Tommy.
Yes.
By The Who, where the members of The Who each play, like, 4 different characters throughout the movie. I, for one, didn't notice that it was the same people until the ending credits, so they did a really good job of disguising them.
It was one of those things where it, like, nickled at my brain where I was just like, wait, who is that? Like, you know what I mean? Like, that type of thing.
So the Juicy Fruits, the first incarnation of them anyway, they're a 50s nostalgia band set in the 70s, but they're a 50s nostalgia greaser band.
Sha-na-na.
Oh, yeah. In fact, this like, the way this movie kind of is framed is kind of like the chronologizing, what's the chronologizing of like popular music up to that point and kind of framing it as if Swan is the one who's like made the way for it. Like he brought blues to England, he brought Liverpool to America, he brought the nostalgia wave so it's kind of like framing all these things, and it's kind of funny because like now we can use so many more decades to be like, this represents all of music in the time, but like it's kind of funny to see like the sort of truncated version you have to do when it's only 1974.
I need the music experts here to tell me, because I know I've heard actual songs. So the song the Juicy Fruits are singing is this over-the-top, melodramatic, partially spoken word piece about a singer who kills himself that his album will sell better, and then they can afford his sister's operation that she needs.
Right.
That was fucking phenomenal.
It's so funny.
What an
and I'm
intro.
like, I know that I've heard actual songs like that, but I couldn't name one. And I
right? And it's like they're scratching at some like common thing.
It's like I know that was a thing in like the 50s, early 60s of that, very melodramatic narrative.
Oh, and of course they have the like a Latino dude singing, which like it first felt odd to me, but then I was thinking like, but that was a specific sensation in the 50s of like, the Richie Valens and the, you know what I'm saying? Like that was such a specific thing of those like guys getting that spotlight,
Which his accent sounds, he has a really thick accent when he's doing the spoken word part, but then it might be even a different person's voice when he's singing.
Yeah, it threw me off at first.
There's a lot of very, very obvious dubbing in the movie also, and not just with the singing. We'll get to another scene.
But then I thought, like, isn't that kind of what they did, like back then, where it's just like, you want to sound American when you're singing, you know what I'm saying? But then it's like, well, when I'm talking, I have no choice but to sound like Latino, but, that sort of thing,
Yeah, but they're doing this very ridiculous song, and he stabs himself with a toy knife on stage, and
flails around.
God. And as the movie unfolds, like, that's a reference to what the story is, and then like the actual story that the musician, that the main story is about, his story in the work itself is about, a Faustian bargain, and it deals with the devil in order for your music to like sell. So it's like it's this whole echoing back to itself narrative, you know what I'm saying?
There's a lot of synecdoche, a lot of
yeah. So it starts off basically. This guy is somehow he just gets in and he starts playing his music.
I think it's that as somebody who has been the unwanted performer doing something during the intermission because they let me, I think that's what's happening is that just Winslow Leach, who is our protagonist, sort of is this nerdy looking guy. He's playing piano and singing and doing this very, kind of flopping around.
Elton John sort of performance.
Yeah, but singing a very pretty song in the middle of the stage, and everybody's just sort of ignoring him because he's just sort of going on between acts, and Swan is impressed.
Yeah, he's enamored, and he's like, wait, I want that sound. And the guy, Philbin is like, well, what, that creep? You want him singing your song? He's like, no, I don't want him. I want his song. Because that sound's going to be the new sound. So that's basically, how we're showing how, the music business operates here.
Yeah. So Philbin goes back to Winslow's dressing room and basically, is trying to butter him up and saying, oh yeah, we love the music. We want to talk, Swan wants to talk to you. Come on, give us. And Winslow explains that he's actually writing this huge cantata that is telling the story of Faust, and Philbin, doesn't know who that is. And
who's he signed with?
Yeah, there is some really great little one-liners there. But Winslow naively agrees to, although we see a little bit of temper because you've got this sort of mild-mannered nerd, and then
he says, we'll get the Juicy Fruits to sing your stuff and it'll pop. That'll sound great.
And Philbin throws him up against the wall and says, nobody's allowed to sing this but me.
Yeah, nobody, you hear me? No, he specifically calls them grease monkeys, which I was like, is this a slang?
I think he says grease balls.
Yeah, grease ball. Like, a reference to like greasers, but like...
Greasers,
I think that's like the 50s style, but also like specific to Italians though, right?
Yeah. Well, so he gets a flare of temper and then immediately just goes, "Oh, I don't know what came over me." And,
Right.
And very naively agrees to just hand over all of his sheet music to Philbin with nothing signed or anything.
So, can I just say, out the gate,
Mm.
I personally found it very hard to sympathize with Winslow.
Oh, most definitely.
For most of the movie.
Yeah.
Because so you literally wrote this whole thing about a person signing a deal with the devil and at no point realized the similarities in your own actions. You didn't think, this is a slight bit ironic, isn't it? Maybe I should rethink this. It's your life work, your masterpiece, your most passionate opus, and you didn't think about it at all, huh?
Saying, yeah, it's like you just let it slip out of your fingers.
Although you could also say, people have sometimes blind spots that you wouldn't expect. People sometimes are, most, the thing that you would think. So,
he just got overwhelmed by
the physician heal thyself sort of thing.
Yeah, and just being overwhelmed by oh my god, someone cares and they're gonna help me, and so sure I'll give it to him. But then a month goes by.
Yeah, but it is just on the surface. You just handed over your sheet music and said, "Okay, bye, Mr. Record Industry and Mr. Record Industry Heavy."
Yeah,
thank you. I'm sure you'll do right by me.
Yeah, and like we mentioned earlier, he does have a temper and is a bit of a douchebag.
Yeah.
So
Winslow,
he's not the perfect guy.
Winslow is
he's not the
far
sweet
from perfect.
Yeah, he's not the sweet, musician who shucks just needs a chance. No, he's a bit of a douche.
Yeah. So he shows up at. It's supposed to be New York, right?
Yes.
It's a lot of it doesn't look like New York.
Well, this movie particularly looks like it's on a very small sound stage.
Well, and some of it was shot in California. Some of it was shot in Austin, apparently, or somewhere in Texas. I think it was Austin. But it had a bit of anybody who's lived in New York is looking and going, that's way too much space.
Yeah, but it's but for the space it has, it's a very especially with how they move the camera, it's a very cramped film. Mm-hmm. There is so much where action happens, and they're right up against the person's face as they're saying it. Characters are really in their faces when you're seeing scenes unfold, especially to show you the tenseness of this record exec who's really trying to push this deal on you. You know what I'm saying?
And the interior of Death Records reminds me of a cross between a monochrome version of the beginning of Willy Wonka's factory where they're all having to stoop down and something out of Clockwork Orange.
I was just about to say Clockwork Orange. Yeah.
and my wife was watching this with me and pointed out that all of the doorways are really low. Everybody who isn't particularly short has to kind of stoop to get under the doorways.
Right, and William Leach is a particularly lanky dude.
Right.
And so you notice him.
And it may just be that Swan's kind of short and he likes everything to be scaled to himself.
But the movie is doing stylistic things, because there's a certain point where you see someone's doing an audition. I think the girl that he's enamored with, her name is Phoenix, and she runs out because she's no, I don't want to do whatever the exec tells me to do. Wait, no. It's weird because she doesn't want to do whatever and she just wants to sing earlier. But then later on, she's I'll do whatever to be famous. And I was but I thought you had integrity earlier, whatever.
Well, so her character evolution is interesting, and we should talk about that. But yeah, when she's there's so Winslow gets thrown out of Death Records after the secretary notices that his file says never to be seen.
Yeah.
And he follows somebody to Swan's house, his mansion, the Swan.
That's what happens. Okay.
And they're holding the audition for all these girls inside this mansion, and there's a very, very literal casting couch that we see just through this cartoonishly Ozian,
a 70s sort of Austin Powers rotating bed sort of shit.
Well, yeah, but we see through this very tiny door, and even Phoenix, who's a fairly average sized woman, has to duck out of that. But yeah, we see her running out of there because the casting couch is literally just a line of girls getting tossed onto a couch, Philbin, I think, jumping on them for a second and pawing them and then tossing them over the back of the couch.
Yeah. And I think the sequence of events here is like kind of screwy because like there's a scene where at the end of one scene he tries to get into contact Swan, and then these really two super tall guards like take him up and they go like, you know, they pick him up and they're like, you know, where do you think you're going? And he's like, oh, I was kind of hoping to go to the hardware store. And he's like, well, we'll take you there.
No,
like,
he says a department store, and then he goes and buys a dress.
Oh, that's what that's about. Because
okay.
the next scene is so like, what the hell? Like, how did he get in again?
I didn't catch that until the second time I watched it.
Yeah.
He says, where's the department store? And then he comes back and he's wearing a dress. And because he already has kind of long hair.
Yeah.
And we just see. So this was one of the scenes where I thought the overdubbing was really hilarious. So we've got this giant Austin Powers style circular couch, like you said, with all these girls, just sort of sexy girls in slips, like, you know, caressing each other. And they're all talking, but it's so obvious.
It sounds like it's like a kung fu movie the way it's overdubbed.
It's so funny, and we see one person who is wearing more of a granny dress, that we only see from the back, and then Swan comes in and Winslow just like turns around and is like, oh hi, Mr. Swan, it's me, Winslow Leach, you remember me? Like,
and it's this movie's so campy because he looks like a fish that's like swimming like as his like head is bobbing. He's like, hey, remember me? And then you hear this like sort of like Gregorian, like sort of like Middle Eastern sort of music playing, and it's like and then like it pans over to Swan and you just see him in all his Phil Spector looking ass glory, and then he says,
get this faggot out of here.
Yeah.
And just completely like doesn't react at all. Just says that.
No.
And so then this is a lot of plot that happens really fast because Winslow gets beaten up and tossed outside, and then two cops find him.
Two black cops specifically.
And they're clearly being paid off by Swan, and they very, very just unabashedly drop a condom full of heroin into his purse. And the next thing we see, he's in Sing Sing.
Oh yeah, like it happens so quick. Like it's like a comic book the way this next sequence of events just happens. Where it's just like he gets life in prison and there's like
it's like they don't even see we don't see a courtroom, we just see a judge on a podium in blackness with a giant American flag behind him where it says life in prison, and Winslow just turns around to the camera like, what?
I was framed.
And so
look, I gotta point out, I personally love the pacing of this movie because it doesn't waste your time like at any turn.
Yeah.
Everything, like, it is a very tight hour and a half, and it gets everything it needs to accomplish in that time done in a very timely way. And that point in particular where, it doesn't waste your time with the specifics of like how you remember in Clockwork Orange, there was so much time devoted to him in prison and all of the things. It's like, no. It's like, smack, you're in prison, this, and then you're out, and you break out. Now you're over here. Now he's doing this.
Yeah, we get to the good part fast because what we want to see is him becoming
the monster.
And so so he's in prison. They say, we're doing a dental experiment. All your teeth are getting taken out. He gets all his teeth replaced with chrome or steel or something, like implants. Yeah. And then he hears that Swan is going to be performing his music and gets so angry while he's working an assembly line that he beats up this assembly line foreman and jumps into a box that goes down a chute, and then literally, and the next thing we see is that box falling out of the back of a truck in Manhattan, and he just gets out and runs back into the record company.
And mind you, this the record company apparently owns this jail, this local jail, because Death Records is owned by him.
Oh yeah,
because he's like they're playing his music on the radio, and like specifically it's like, the person who's made a generous donation, Mr. Swan, to this organization has this new thing that we're trying to do for his record.
I mean, it's the real prison Sing Sing, which that's there's a pun. But that he just basically owns Sing Sing. So Winslow just conveniently pops out of a box in Manhattan after escaping from jail. Runs, like you said, no wasted time. He literally runs into the record company, runs past the secretary, just starts trying to wreak havoc, and he gets his head caught in a record press.
Oh yeah, he gets his the like part of his the sleeve on his arm gets caught in like a trigger.
And so his head is pressed in a record press, and he runs outside squeaking.
And he had gotten shot by a police officer, didn't he?
And he got.
But they didn't show the shooting. Like,
I think we hear something. He gets shot, and so he's got his head's been in a record press.
Mm-hmm.
He's got silver teeth, and he's been shot, and he's like dragging himself along, going.
It's a very visceral scene too. That we see
throws himself into the East River, and then we see newspaper.
Oh yeah, songwriter was killed.
Yeah, like Mad Toonsmith.
Yeah, just an overwrought version of like saying like dude who writes songs was killed.
Yeah, and it makes you also appreciate just some like time differences, because this was 1974, so really before even home video got popular. And it holds on that little story for long enough for you to actually read the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I feel like that isn't done as much anymore, because they're like, you're just gonna come back and read it later. You can pause it.
Yeah.
And then the next thing is, and this was before Star Wars, so this like
74.
we hear Darth Vader breath, but it's before Darth Vader, and we're seeing things from Winslow's perspective.
Oh, that's right. As he walks,
is interesting too, because at the very top you see from Swan's point of view.
True.
And then once Winslow has thoroughly become a monster, we're seeing from his point of view. We should stop real quick, and because we didn't really talk that much about Phoenix,
right?
Because we met her. So we met Phoenix when Winslow was first trying to get into the Swanage and saw the girls auditioning.
Yeah.
And Phoenix, he walks into the Swanage, and all these girls are just singing his music horribly. It's just this cacophony of awful singers warming up. And then there's a close-up of this, very pretty girl singing well. And it's really funny because this is Jessica Harper.
Yeah.
And she has got this little bitty baby face, and yet she's got this very rich voice.
What's her name? I always mix up these chanteuses. Who's saying Gypsies, Tramps, and Thieves?
Cher.
Yeah, that type of voice.
Yeah,
you know what I'm
got
saying?
kind of
Like
a
that
young
rich.
Cher.
Yeah, you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and so he has this little moment of duetting with her and encouraging her and saying, how much she loves her singing, and so he has a moment with Phoenix before all of this shit goes down, and he ends up in Sing Sing. So he's now thoroughly disfigured, and he goes into the paradise, and I believe he immediately goes to the costume department and grabs this silver owl helmet and a cape. And some grease paint, I think, because he puts on makeup somewhere in there. He puts on black lipstick and eyeshadow somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Fucking iconic.
Yeah, it looks very cool.
And this is the scene where he confronts Swan, right? And, then there's the big scene where he puts the bomb in the car on the set.
Right, so
the first split screen.
Yeah, so this is the second time we see the Juicy Fruits, except they're now the Beach Bums. And they're singing my favorite song. This is my favorite song. Not just in the movie, this is my favorite song.
Really? See, for me, this was a bit of a disorienting moment to where, like, and I know they're doing it purposefully, but, like, I feel like Brian De Palma, as he was making this movie, he's someone who is a movie maker trying to bring a stage thing to like film, and it feels like he approaches it in a weird way that's like interesting at some points, but feels like it's not understanding like how you're supposed to like block something musically if you want it to be as impactful as possible. And like now with this scene, it feels kind of interesting to me because like it has like the music playing, and a typical person who is caring about the music and how that would play out, you would hear like a lot of the song and hear it very well and be able to hear it the whole time. But with this, it very quickly starts to like be unnerving with lots of other sounds like kind of coming in and like making things really sound really cramped and really loud.
I mean, the point of this
song,
it's
so disorienting and weird.
I genuinely do love this song. I don't know why, but the point of the song is that it's a really terrible schlocky. It's taking the music because. You've got the Winslow's Faust music going, you know,
The pound.
no,
You know?
I was not myself last night.
Right.
Couldn't make things right. And then they're turning into, I was not myself last night. I ran the light. And,
Yeah.
You know me already on probation. And it's supposed to be this like schlocky Beach Boys knockoff. So I think the fact that, you know, we're not supposed to give too much attention to the song really, other than noting, oh, it sounds like a shallow pop song using some of the tune and some of the lyrics from Winslow's music, and they're abusing Winslow's music here. But it's just, I love the choruses. Upholstery, well, my baby sits up close to me. It's about car upholstery.
Oh yeah.
And opening carburetors, man. That's what life is all about. So that's like the thing. I saw this movie once as a kid, and that was the thing that stuck in my head more than anything else.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so but yeah, I mean, I think that we're just not supposed to be paying that much attention to this song.
And of course, you're hearing like a ticking that's playing along with the song that's happening as the
and
bomb
it is
goes
a
in.
very disorienting split screen that we're seeing. On the one hand, we're seeing the stage point of view with the beach bums singing the song and these girls in bikinis dancing, and then we're seeing backstage where the girls in bikinis are saying, "I'm cold. This is just a rehearsal. Why can't I put a coat on?" And Philbin is like, "You getting paid so I can look at your tits or whatever."
Yeah.
And then one of the beach bums saying in an Australian accent that he's too tired and he doesn't feel right about this and he doesn't want to do, and literally having a handful of pills shoved into his mouth like he's a dog, like having his throat rubbed to make him so, and so, you know, just being force-fed pills and having the girls being made to strip, and then they're all shoved on stage. And we've seen the Phantom put a bomb in the back of this prop car. And so we're just waiting, and all these, like, you know, I think all the beach bums and then like 3 or 4 bikini girls on the car, and right in the middle of a verse, it just blows up.
Yeah.
Very effective.
Yeah. It was. I think the chaos was effective because you're sitting there going, "What's happening? What's happening? Oh my God, what's happening? What's happening?" Instead of just a sort of, it's a more natural tension waiting for the bomb to go off than if it was just quiet.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
And then the next scene is the Phantom confronts Swan.
And Swan is just so, every time Swan is just like sociopathically chill, like when he sees Winslow in his bed of girls and is just like, "Get him out of here," and Swan sees Winslow in the hall and is just like, "Oh, hello, Winslow," and like he doesn't react.
He has the most chill, like, British accent, like, "Oh yes."
It's that, like, well, it's not even British. It's like that mid-Atlantic. It's mid-Atlantic. It's that I'm American, but I want to sound fancy. So
you know what I'm trying to say, right?
Sound
like,
sort of halfway British.
Yeah.
Go on. I feel like we've skirted past my favorite thing about this movie. Is that Swan is played by Paul Williams, who is, by all accounts, the most unassuming fucking person you could have in this super villainy role. Like, this motherfucker wrote Rainbow Connection, and really? Here he is. He wrote Rainbow Connection. He wrote Evergreen, From a Star Is Born. Like, he's written so much, like, beautiful stuff. He's currently the president of ASCAP.
Oh, shit.
He's just classic Hollywood. Oh. And to have him in this role, as someone who's 5'3", small, very unassuming, very not intimidating, but his demeanor makes up for it so much that you know something is, like, I mean, there are plenty of context clues if you know what you're looking for, that you can kind of piece the puzzle together before it's told to you explicitly that there is something very devious under the surface here. But it's just this tiny, like, I know earlier you said he was kind of like a Phil Spector. I honestly didn't really make in my head that much of a direct Phil Spector comparison, even though it definitely can be made. But just this character, and being played by Paul Williams, who is just like so squeaky clean image.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of goes for everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, I love everybody in this movie. I don't think anyone does a poor job. But from 2021 hindsight, for a film that was made apparently only on a $1.3 million budget, and besides Paul Williams having his notes as being like a classic songwriter and Phoenix appearing in fucking I almost said it wrong.
She's in both
Suspiria.
Suspirias. She's the main, She's
Yeah.
the main character in the original Suspiria, and then she has a small role in the remake.
Besides that, like, Winslow, Philbin, Beef, they're all just like, they all just seem like kind of character actors. Like, they don't seem like
they're not
huge
movie
stars.
in this, yeah.
Yeah.
No one looks like a movie star. It's what I love about that.
And you know, people said, like, as soon as I look up stuff about this, there's the immediate comparisons to a Rocky Horror Picture Show, which I feel like, you know, because it's definitely like the similar campy feel with how the story unfolds. It's definitely like chronicalizing music. I keep messing up this word, but chronicalizing, you know, telling music.
Chronicling?
Yeah.
Chronicling music. It wasn't really that simple. Goddammit. Chronicling music. You know what I'm saying? And also like, you know, and also having that scene with Beef at the end where he's like coming out of the tank looking like Rocky, you know, like there's that similar like looking aesthetic to it, but it is very different in that it's like, it's not like nearly the same, you know, not nearly the same openly gayness, you know, to it.
Well, it's a lot less sexual in general.
Yeah.
I mean, there's sex in this movie, but the sex isn't... Rocky Horror, the plot is two innocent virgins get sexually corrupted by a bunch of kinky freaks. Whereas the plot of Phantom is essentially the plot of Phantom. It's the plot of Phantom of the Opera, and it's much more... And it's got the supernatural element, whereas I guess Rocky Horror... I mean, it depends if you consider aliens supernatural, so...
Yeah.
But yeah, I can see why people make the comparison, but they're very different.
Yeah, they're very different. And like I said, I feel like that movie does a better job of like being like, this is a musical that we turn into a movie, as opposed to like, this looks like a movie where like they're like using like the techniques of what a movie is, but putting a musical onto it.
Right,
you know
because
what I mean?
Rocky Horror started... Also, that's the other thing is... That's the other big difference is that Rocky Horror is a musical in the classic sense, and the characters burst into song because they have feelings, whereas all the music in Phantom of the Paradise is actually diegetic, except for like... I
believe so, like key moments. Like,
there's a couple of songs that play as sort of soundtracky background songs, but you never, like, Winslow doesn't like stand in the middle of the street in Manhattan after he gets out of Sing Sing and starts singing about how great it feels to be out of prison. Right. You know, it's the music is music that is happening in the context of the plot. So he confronts Swan backstage at the Paradise after, and Swan seems fine with the fact that
they just killed some of his performers.
I know this was after. So Swan basically talks Winslow into signing this contract in blood, and it's a moment where you feel like this is somebody who had beef with the industry because because Swan hands him this huge sheaf of contract, and Winslow's looking through it. It's all this legalese he doesn't understand. He's like, "What does that mean?" And Swan says, "Oh, that's for protecting you. That's just a transportation clause." And it's all like, no, this is selling your soul.
Like, there's specific wording where it's just like, because what he said was, that's a transportation clause. And it's just like, in the most abstract way of all the words that he just used to describe what's in that contract, like what's said there. Like, you could say a transportation, but what he means is a transportation of your shit to my, like, bank account. Like, shit like that, you know what I mean?
It's very much like, Winslow at so many points is just so naive. Even after he's become a murderous monster and has like planted a bomb and blown up 6 innocent people, he is still just terribly, terribly naive.
Like, you're weirdly cool about it. Like, he just ripped you off and you're like, oh, but I'm sure he wouldn't do it again. Just sign this contract in blood.
And it doesn't, because he seems hostile to Swan, but it's not so much that he trusts him as just that he Swan talks him into believing that he doesn't have any other choice.
And I also think that it's like, you know, he still has this ego, right? He's not a perfect person. He still wants his music to be out there. He still wants to get big, right? Like, and so there's still a part of him that's like, oh, well, you're gonna make the music? Well, and then he's, cause his voice has been ruined by the accidents that happened to him earlier. So he's like, well, I want Phoenix to sing my music. She's gonna be the person who sings it and no one else does. And he says, sure, dear boy. And like, we'll get right on it.
And Swan hooks him, so when he gets to the paradise, all he can do is kind of squeak and squawk, and Swan hooks him up with a robotic voice box, so when he's talking, he sounds like, you know. Yeah. But then he also can be hooked up to he's got this little round carpeted room where he can be hooked up to all these machines. And the scene where Swan is adjusting everything until his voice sounds good was like, for me, that was like oddly satisfying. I find that so, I don't know why, but I just find like that him adjusting it until it gets just right. And his singing voice, the Phantom singing voice is also Paul Williams. That's
okay.
Yeah, that's the same voice as Swan. Which makes sense.
Yeah.
That he would just put his own voice in there. So whenever we hear the Phantom singing, after he becomes the Phantom, that's actually Swan's voice. That's not Winslow Leach's. Cool. Yeah.
The one thing I wanted to point out was because Mues, you had mentioned earlier about all the characters being really good. The one thing that it felt me like, I don't think he was a bad actor, but I think that his direction might have been a little odd. The Beef character, with how he's supposed to be like, okay, so there's a scene where where Swan is like, which I think is stylistically looks really cool, where he's like in the middle of this big record looking thing, and he's like looking at all the musicians that he wants to like pair with the sound, and he's like, no, it's not right, and going past each one, and it's a cool freaking sequence, like hearing the different styles,
genres.
Yeah.
I think that cowboy is the same actor who played Beef. I'm not 100%, but I think that the country singer is also, I think his name is Garrett something. But I think.
Oh, that'd be so funny.
And then it lands on Beef, and he like plays this really hard, like heavy guitar sounding version of it, and he's like, there's something in here that I like. And then like, okay, so you know, with the joke of this character being, he starts off sounding like he's this really hard rocker dude, but he's actually really fey, and he's actually really
he's like a macho. He's like a macho camp gay.
Yeah, but it's like, it feels like in this way that's like trying to like joke on the, you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, you thought this metal guy is supposed to be hardcore, but he's actually,
So thinking in the context of the music scene in the 70s, you know, his look is like very glam rock. I mean, he's like kind of glittery to start out with, and he's got the permed hair and all that. And there was that sense of like, oh, you know, the glam rock was gay and that it was effeminate. So I don't think it was necessarily that we were supposed to look at this guy and think, oh, he must be like super hetero macho. And he is he's like I said, he's like a macho camp gay. But I don't think, I think that, and I mean, it's hard to say, I wasn't around in the 70s, but the impression that I've got of what the general sense of that kind of glam rock was at the time, I don't think that was supposed to be a contrast. I think that was supposed to be all sort of a piece with who he is.
Like that's part of the like, oh, there's a gender bending element to this rock that's happening in the 70s.
Yeah, because right? And later
like with like David Bowie,
right?
But that would be later.
And later in the performance, when Beef is kind of strutting around and doing these like weird little dances and licking the guitar and all that.
That would be around the same time because David Bowie was out by then, right?
I think so, but Beef is specifically doing Mick Jagger.
Okay.
Like his little chicken strut thing is Mick Jagger. So, you know, and people, I think, you know, even back then people had this sense. There's a line in Hair, at least in the movie, where the army recruiter says, "Are you a homosexual, son?" And he says, "Well, I wouldn't kick Mick Jagger out of bed." And you know, so I think that was all, you know.
Like, it reminded me of the Producers scene, you know, when they're trying to get a guy who, you know, is like, transgressive of the time. But it's like 5 years earlier, so with that, it's like a flower power guy who's acting really weirdly effeminate, but is also weird. Like, I got that similar energy. Did you get that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, I think it was, I don't know, it's hard because, like, I think there are things that were very much comments on the music industry of that period. And so it's a little hard to look back sort of through, God, 4 decades. No, 5. Oh my God, that was almost 50 years ago. Oh my God, time. Yeah. Time is terrifying.
Time.
I was like, the 70s, that's 30 years ago.
Yeah, well, it was this funny thing about, like, the part near the end, like, when they're parodying the Kiss thing, and I had to have that thing in my brain where it's just like, because it looks so much like Kiss, I had that moment of like, but this isn't even like the 80s yet, so they have to be talking about this like right as it's happening, right? Like, especially the really big stage show thing that lots of people accuse them of, where it's like, oh, you care more about the stage show and making it look cool rather than, the light show rather than the actual music,
But they did have stuff like that, especially if you're looking at like what Phil Spector did, but but yeah, that scene around somebody pointed, I think I saw this on like TV Tropes, somebody pointed out something really funny, that record desk that Swan has looks so cool with him sitting in the middle of it.
Yeah.
But he would have to like scramble over. He'd have to like clamber over
right,
the top
in order to get on it.
To get in the middle or like crawl under it.
Yeah. He'd have to look goofy.
But yeah, he picks Beef, and then there's and we missed the moment. We see a little bit of Swan sitting by himself and watching a video of his earlier interaction with Winslow, and we don't see the video, we just hear it, but his voice sounds kind of weird, and Swan watching the video is cringing at it. So that's a little bit of foreshadowing that we got there, that he's watching this video of himself, he sounds really awful in the video, and he doesn't seem to like what he's seeing. And then he picks Beef, and we get this little press conference where Swan they've landed a little private airplane, and we get the exposition that Swan will not be photographed, because you've got these reporters coming, and they're being told, by the guards, by the bodyguards, you are not to film or photograph Swan. That's
and he's looking like Willy Wonka with the top hat and shit.
That was it wasn't supposed to be Willy Wonka. That was a specific reference to I don't think it was Dr. Oh, it was he's supposed to look like Lon Chaney. That's what he's supposed to look like with the top hat. Yeah. And then they've got a giant coffin standing on end, and and again, the Juicy Fruits, although they're not the Juicy Fruits, because the Juicy Fruits were the Beach Bums, and then now they're dead. So it's some other people who are the same actors as the Juicy Fruits, but they're the rock goblins.
Yeah. They're the ones introducing them. Yeah.
They're called the Undead at this point, I think, and they're standing around this coffin, and they open it up, and Beef is all glittered, all wearing glitter, and he's got a skull and crossbones painted on his cheek.
Looking especially glam rocky,
And he's got his head kind of turned to the side with his eyes closed, and then he slowly opens his eyes and turns his head to the camera and slowly twists his face into a grimace and starts hissing like a cat.
Yeah.
Fucking Beef sucks so much that he goes all the way back around to being fucking amazing.
He does, exactly. It's
like when you first see him, it's like, fuck this guy. But then, like, almost immediately, it's like, okay, no, never mind, he kicks ass. I fucking love this guy. Yeah, fucking Beef. Beef's an asshole.
He's so over the top that it's just like that. That takes balls to be that over the top. To be it's like no, you've earned that. And they've got this whole backstory. They're telling the press that they found him in Transylvania or something.
Yeah.
Oh Jesus. Yeah.
They got to tell the Alice Cooper story.
And forgot to say that. Okay, so a big plot point here is that Swan, and part of how he's talked Winslow into signing the contract, is promising him Phoenix will sing this music, nobody but Phoenix, and then just perversely Swan's talking to Philbin, and he's just like, no, she's perfect, I don't like it, I don't like her perfection, I despise perfection in anyone but me, I'm gonna find somebody else, and that's when he picks Beef. So Swan, for apparently just out of whimsy, decides to screw over the promise he made to Winslow and to put Phoenix back in the chorus and to go with Beef instead.
Yeah, in fact,
which which kind of goes back to what I love about the movie so much is that everything just happens so fast.
Yeah.
Like,
we keep
really?
jumping over plot points just because there's just a plot point in every moment.
Oh yeah, and there isn't really a second thought given to anything, and it's just on to the next thing.
Right, because we were watching that, and my wife said, she was like, but wait, why is he putting her back in the course? Because he wants to.
Because he has to.
Okay, there's some...
Because the story dictates
it. There's some level of me that's just like, okay, Swan. Why do you want to screw over this guy so badly? Why don't you just pay him like you're paying all these other people? And just like, why do you have to have the scene where, no, we must board up the room that he's in after he writes my music so I can steal it?
Yeah,
why?
The night of the show, he literally tries to pull a cask of Amontillado. Hey, another literary reference. But he's there's stuff that didn't fully make sense to me where he says, okay, you're going to rewrite your whole cantata for Phoenix to sing because, Winslow wrote it for his own voice. So you're going to rewrite it for an alto. And he bricks him. He closes him up in this little tiny studio and feeds him nothing but pills. And it's like, he must be incredibly dehydrated.
And also I'm thinking like, wait, you're bringing the music and finishing it the day of the show?
Right. Yeah, they're having him write the cantata while they're rehearsing.
Like,
and
even Mozart, they got the beginning music first.
Okay, he wrote this whole cantata for his own masculine voice, and then Swan says you got to rewrite it for Phoenix, but then he casts a male who is then complaining that the music's too high and he can't sing it. It's like, why didn't you just take the music that was already there?
Just go through his
but it was so that we could have the montage of
right.
So we could have the montage of the Phantom trying desperately to write and finish the cantata in time, and Swan feeding him pills, and then he passes out with pills scattered all over, and it looks like
a great scene.
And he wrote the end on the music, and it, like, I know this is the 70s, so this is impossible, but it looks like the end was written by a mouse in Microsoft Paint.
And and he Swan pulls the music from underneath the Phantom, and you see like a bunch of pills sliding off of the page.
And he just sneaks off with the cantata and tells the masons, the bricklayers, that he already has posted outside to brick up the wall. And this is, I think, the actual night of the show at this point.
It's like,
it's
what?
like the time like anybody who's done theater is like, what's wrong with you?
You guys just getting this? Fuck this production.
And the Phantom wakes up to find he's been bricked in, but just enraged, just busts out, and we hear him scream.
I don't even think you see that, do you? Like how he does it?
No, we just later see the busted.
Of course not.
Action moments get missed.
I love it.
It's like a cartoon, and then we hear the scream from Beef's dressing room, and Beef, to his credit, is like tries to get. He's like, no, this is not right. Nope. and we see Philbin outside in the line, like threatening teenage girls who are trying to get into the show, and then we see Beef running around in a Santa Claus jacket. And he comes down.
His Christmas Gansey.
But we forgot. So Beef's in his dressing room singing.
Playing
so the
the
reason
music.
Beef's trying to run away is he's in his dressing room singing. And the Phantom, this is the psycho scene. Beef's showering and singing, and the Phantom comes up with a knife, but then just like puts a plunger on his mouth and threatens him. And Beef,
you will never sing her songs. They're only meant for Phoenix. Anyone who tries dies.
And there's this amazing little just quick edit gag where we just hear Beef go and just kind of fall out.
He pulls the plunger off and he just goes,
and it just falls out of frame. It's so great. So Beef's trying to run away. And Philbin...
Now, this scene kind of confuses me because it's like, first, he makes absolute sense. He says it's like, yeah, I'm leaving this. This is insane. I just heard what sounded like, a devil from beyond the grave telling me to not sing. I'm not fucking singing. But then the guy goes like, oh, you was probably just high or something like that. And he's like, hey, man, I know a drug high and a real high, and that was da-da-da. And then he goes like, well, it's like, he says like, if I'm not going to do something, it's not going to be because I got stage fright, all right?
Stage fright.
Yeah, it's because it's because some creature from beyond doesn't want me to do it. Now gangway. I love the way he said that line.
He's trying to leave. He's in his Santa Claus coat and he's got his 2 suitcases but Philbin basically talks him into.
Yeah,
I mean,
he scoots him back up.
we don't see Beef changing his mind. We see Beef
Yeah.
being, but it's kind of that like he's being fed a lot of pills. He's being hauled up the stairs. He knows what he's supposed to be doing, and he just kind of gives up on trying to run off and does the show.
Yeah, because he says like, "Help the Phantom, help the Phantom," but he's still going back.
Right.
Yeah,
which and I think that's again, it's like the music industry. You have so many, especially at that time, you had so many people who were. I mean, heck, I say at that time, but I mean, Demi Lovato's talked about getting like fed diet pills, like Judy Garland, and
true.
So so you've got this drug-addled, manipulated singer who it's like maybe he knows he doesn't want to do the show, but he just doesn't kind of have the wherewithal to really follow through.
Yeah.
So then we get to see the actual show. And it starts out with the undead, who are, again, the juicy fruits, but apparently they're undead. They came back from the grave and they're blown up. And they're
it's a metaphor for how music is recycled or something.
And they're in this Kiss makeup, except it's apparently a reference to the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. And you've got these creepy, like, Victorian nurses who are also in the black and white German expressionism makeup. And they're doing this song that is just... so like the lyrics are so ridiculous.
Yeah. And the scene happening too is so cool. Like they do little things where like they have like plants in the audience that they mess with, where it's like two guitars have like metal knives at the end of them, and they poke someone in the audience and pick their shirt up or something like that.
They take an arm from an audience member, and they take a torso from an audience member. Finally, they take the head off an audience member, and
start throwing it around.
And it's all very like it's. This is what you would see if you were seeing the stage show. Like it all looks stagey.
Yeah.
It's not meant to look realistic, really. And
right.
You've got these little like nurse creatures, and they've got a giant needle and thread, and they're stitching the body parts together behind a screen. And the song is weird because it's like we're not quite sure who these people are supposed to be. And again, this is all theoretically supposed to be about Faust, but they're singing about how they need a man who's going to lead them and be their leader and help them have fun while putting together
that's what the lyrics are. Yeah.
Putting together a Frankenstein's monster, and then the Frankenstein's monster shows up, and that's Beef. And he sings about, you put the worst parts of yourselves together, and that's me, and I'm the evil you made by putting all the worst parts of yourself together. So I'm not sure what any of that has to do with Faust. But
not directly, yeah.
But Beef starts singing, and we see the Phantom who is busted out, and he's hissing and growling and plotting while, he sees Beef doing the thing Beef was not supposed to do. And Beef is just being so obnoxious, just prancing around and shaking his ass and grimacing. And it's, and singing this song and gyrating and wearing these horribly upsetting, very tight shorts and the Phantom kills him.
Oh yeah, by throwing an actual
by throwing a neon lightning bolt
yes.
at him and electrocuting him.
Sick.
And it's not that he throws this neon, or I guess it almost looks like he sends it down a string, but I'm not sure if it's supposed to be getting thrown and it's just that the movie has a string. Or
right, it's a breaking the moment thing of like
so he throws
production value.
He throws a neon lightning bolt at Beef, and the lightning bolt electrocutes him, but it seems to be part of the show, and so the audience is just like, yeah.
And the way the camera does the sort of like stuttering effect where it looks really weird, like how he's affecting like,
and then Beef catches fire and just immolates on stage, and everybody's still just like, yeah. And so they throw the curtain down, and some people put Beef out, and somebody pointed out that Beef is... So a lot of the characters have animal names. Beef is the only one named after a dead animal, and he dies.
Oh, damn.
Right there.
Oh, yeah.
But they... I think it's Philbin who comes up to Phoenix and says, "Look, this psycho killed Beef, so you could sing. So get out there and sing."
Yeah, and then she has to follow it in a number that, like, in the movie that's cool. Like, you have a down tempo number, but like an audience this hype, I don't think they want something this low tempo.
It's funny because
they just saw a man burned to death.
Like,
I don't know if this is gonna follow up.
It's funny because they do seem disappointed at first because they pull the curtain out,
yeah,
and all these people are like rioting up against the curtain, and they pull the curtain up, and it's just it's just her standing there in a pretty white dress, and they all like kind of turn around and go and like just walk away. And and the Phantom has garroted the spotlight operator to take over the spotlight. And so a well spotlit Phoenix sings this very beautiful down-tempo number, and the audience, they're kind of like, oh, okay, and they like her by the end of it. And then that's the moment when Phoenix becomes a fame monster.
Yeah.
Because she was, because a big thing with her, and I think we didn't really touch on her audition number because we see her audition later where she's... there was the casting couch, but then we see her get to actually audition and sing.
And that's another, that's the point particularly where I didn't like the blocking of it with how the camera works. Because it's like, this is supposed to be the, oh my God, this is the girl moment. And the way it's blocked with the camera just seems like it's supposed to not be. Like we're supposed to like subvert our expectations. Because like at the end of the number, she like... It's like a wide shot where it seems like it's not really focusing on her, and then she like sings really big, and then like does a dance where she like dances out of the building, and then just like awkwardly shuffles back in.
She like awkwardly dances off, and then dances, and then like runs back on to grab her hat, and it's so funny.
But it was like a thing
I
where
thought
that
was hilarious.
Like it was funny, but in that way where it was just like, but wait, are you trying to show me this is the it girl?
Well, because at that point it's like I'm never sure what we're supposed to think quite about Phoenix, because she does have a good voice.
Yeah.
She does have a good voice, but I think it's also that the main point is that Winslow is enamored of her, possibly because she was the only one of the initial audition he saw who wasn't a horrible singer. Like he comes into this caterwauling house full of girls going like, and then, Phoenix is actually a good singer, and and she's pretty, and he's immediately enamored of her. So, and then again, even in the real audition, like the girl that we hear singing the audition piece right before Phoenix can't carry a tune, which I'm like, as somebody who's done musical auditions, it's like, wouldn't it be nice if you were literally the only person who wasn't tone deaf? Wouldn't that be great?
Oh man,
it reminds me.
I got this one in the bag.
I was once practicing a Shakespeare monologue for an audition, and somebody was watching, and he said, "Wow, if you can remember that whole thing, they're definitely going to give you the part." Bless your heart. So I feel like Phoenix is. She's good. But I think a big part of it is that Winslow is obsessed with her. I mean, just like Christine in The Phantom of the Opera is not necessarily the most amazing opera singer. It's just that the Phantom is fixated on her, and that's the point.
Yeah, and so
but Phoenix, she's this very like, I'm not gonna get on the casting couch. I'm a real singer. Let me sing, and she is determined. And I mean, I think it's not just that she's too high and mighty to get on the casting couch. It's that she realizes the girls getting on that casting couch never get to sing.
She's like, I do want to sing.
They're auditioning to be Swan groupies.
Yeah.
But she, in that moment, gets her taste of the audience, and she's just instantly like the fame monster. She's, yes, give me more.
Yeah.
I am now a superstar. I need this and nothing else but this for the rest of my life.
And she goes off stage to like, prep herself because Swan's like, gotten in her ear and told her all that good stuff about how things are going to be.
And then she kind of has a moment of like, oh, did Beef die? Oh well.
Right.
But I'm famous now.
And then the Phantom gets to her and he's like, you can't do this. Look at what happened to Beef, and like points it out, like they're carrying him out on a stretcher. Like the man is dead.
The Phantom tries to appeal and tells her who he is and shows her his horrid face. And she basically just says, I don't care, I'm famous, I like this, I got what I wanted, you can't tell me what to do. And she goes off with Swan, and she seems to be genuinely, if not in love with Swan, happily sleeping with him because I mean, like,
that's what ruined the thing where I was like, but I thought earlier you were like, I'm all about this.
Except that, but that's the thing is like her sleeping with Swan then isn't, I'm going to, like she's already gotten what she wants, and her sleeping with him seems to be, she's genuinely really happy and really grateful to him, and is like, let's do it, let's celebrate.
Because it felt like such a specific, like, well, I mean, I'm sure Swan's character is specifically doing it to twist the knife in on him, and it was so set up and framed that way, where it's like, especially when you see the scene, the very long scene of him crying over Swan having sex with her.
Sitting on the sunroof and
yeah,
crying.
it just felt like a very weird cuckold moment after a while. He's like, okay, dude, are you just gonna keep watching him making out with her?
Like, because, I mean, but that's the thing is, like, Phoenix, I mean, I think her sleeping with Swan is not, you know, it's upsetting to Winslow, obviously.
But she has her own motivation.
She just genuinely wants to sleep with Swan at that moment.
I get you.
And Winslow...
There is also the moment in the previous scene when Winslow abducts Phoenix. Afterwards, Phoenix, not even asked, straight up says, the freak who killed Beef is on the roof.
Yeah.
Like, straight up sells him out.
Right. Well,
like,
damn.
She immediately is like, fuck that guy. I saw his face. He's fucking weird looking.
Yeah. Well, and
there he is. Go find him.
And he, I mean, whether intentionally or not, threatened her and told her, you can't keep doing this thing that you just had a great time doing. It's your goal in life. Stop doing it.
She didn't know who he was until the end, right? Because
she didn't believe him, I guess.
Yeah.
Or even if she did, I mean, I think, it's like, she just had a great time. She just achieved her goal, living the dream, and now this weirdo who just killed her co-star told her that, you know, she's not allowed to do the thing that...
You know, that is a good point. He did kill, like, he's saying, look at what fame did to that person. Like, in a sense, like, oh, you know, Swan is taking advantage of the fact that this person died for his club. Yeah, sure, that's bad. But it was still you that actually did the killing.
Right,
and, like,
you know,
Winslow also later is like, Swan took my voice. Swan did all this. You broke in. Right. You got stuck in the record press.
Swan didn't put you in the record press. Well, and
no, you snuck in the dress in the rehearsal. Like, all these things, they were easily preventable.
Yeah. I think that Phoenix is a really great character because she's not this. She's very multidimensional in that. Winslow sees her as, oh, you know, my perfect innocent angel who would never betray me, even though he has no reason to think she has any loyalty.
Exactly, yeah, because she doesn't talk to him that much, yeah.
But she's also not just some conniving femme fatale who will do anything it takes or whatever.
I get what you're saying.
She's a driven singer who wants to be a singer, who finds success and is like, cool, I'm famous now. This is what I wanted. I want to keep doing this. This is great. And she just seems like a very real person. And in that, she's not this perfect and innocent angel. And she's also not... You know, and she's also not like a monster for being freaked out that this guy who murdered somebody is now grabbing her and telling her you can't do your job anymore. Right. You know, and I like
put it in perspective.
Right, and I like that she isn't, you know, just sort of painted one way or the other. I get you. And also, you know, her name being Phoenix, she's also like the survivor. Like through all this crazy stuff happening, she's you know, staying alive through it and rising up from Beef's ashes.
There was a shot earlier we didn't mention, but it was when Winslow screams when he realizes he's been like barricaded in, and they have the brick wall in front of the door, and everyone reacts to it, and Beef is scared as shit, and Beef goes and finds Philbin and is just like, don't you even know what's going on in your own house, man? And there's a shot, and I love that they zoomed in on it, where I'm guessing he has, like...
Beef's
I didn't even see where
buckle.
Oh, yeah!
The antler belt buckle!
Like, poking Philbin's belly.
I fucking love it! And at the end of the movie where they're doing, like, the little, like, montage of the shots for each character, they included that one for Beef!
Yeah.
I'm like, fuck yeah! They know!
Wearing a pair of antlers as a belt buckle. Yeah, Beef is great.
It's so dope!
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Beef does have some interesting wardrobe accoutrement.
I gotta admit, out of all the characters that died, Beef was the only one I was sad about.
Because, well, for one thing, Beef is I think he's the first named character who dies. You know, I mean, they you know, we see the juicy fruits get blown up, but Beef is the first character that we've really, like, gotten to know as a person who dies.
Yeah.
You know?
And he's also very similar to Eddie in Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Oh yeah.
And that like he's the one who gets killed, and he's like the crazy
True.
rock and roll guy.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So that scene where Winslow once again kind of stalkery goes to the Swanage, and he's like up on the roof, like laying on the sunroof and watching Swan and Phoenix, canoodling in the bed.
And meanwhile, like. Swan has cameras everywhere, right? So he's watching.
Yeah, Swan knows.
He
Swan
knows
Winslow's up on the roof.
So he's watching Winslow watching him.
And
Winslow, like the biggest dick.
Right, and Winslow tries to kill himself, which is a moment that's kind of, it's like a fake out where it almost seems like the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And then Swan comes out in his pajamas and looks down at Winslow, who is alive. He
pulls out the knife, and then he grasps back to life, like, huh?
He's like, oh, you can't get away from me that easily. We signed this contract.
It's such a cool looking scene because, like, it's so, like, the wind is blowing and all that stuff, so his, like, hair and stuff looks particularly...
It's a dark and stormy night.
Yeah, and so as he's pulling it out, it looks even especially darker, and he's just like, what do you think you're doing? You're under contract.
Yeah.
And then, like, the fan goes, well, fuck it, I'll kill you. And he goes, like... I'm under contract too. And that's when it kind of unfolds that it's like, oh, he's on the devil's payroll.
We get a lot of backstory really quickly where because I think it's after that there's a lot of quick cuts, but Swan, we find out, has decided that he gets Phoenix to sign a contract also, and that he's going to have her killed on stage because that's going to be a great for ratings.
Yeah, record producer, like, stop. Why would you kill so many of your own records? It's like, do you want the music to come out that you can actually sell?
Eddie, just like the Ballad of Eddie at the beginning, a dead star sells a lot of albums.
This is true, but like,
they can sell more if they make more.
Yeah, and also, can they record them first? Because as far as we're concerned, this has all been like, it hasn't even been a full 2 days. They haven't had time to make any music.
I'm not sure what the timeline is there. But Winslow breaks into Swan's office, I think, and watches all these videos that Swan has. And sees the first one where a young Swan, and there's a little bit where a woman who is supposed to look a lot older than him. I think his hair,
that's right.
I think his hair and glasses threw me off because Swan is supposed to look about 30, and he looked a lot older to me, and so it threw me off when I was like, oh, he's supposed to look preternaturally young.
And also, I think, like, us looking back at the 70s, that just looks like the 70s guy look. You know what I'm saying? So it's not really like like, you could be a star in your late 40s in the 70s and look like that. Yeah, sure. You know what I mean?
But he's supposed to look about 30, and so a woman who again is supposed to look much older is like, that's that we were sweethearts in high school. And so you go, what? And then Winslow finds this video where in the 50s, I guess, from his hair, a 30-year-old Swan is making a video of his about to be bathtub suicide, saying he's getting old and he just can't stand to see his beautiful face ravaged by time, and is about to slash his wrist, and he's in this super luxe bathtub that's surrounded by mirrors, and his reflection, and this is super effective and creepy, his reflection starts talking to him.
Yeah, he's like, what are you doing? Hey, don't waste a soul. You know?
And basically the reflection that is the devil offers him eternal youth in exchange for his soul, and also he has to film himself every day and watch the film, and that's when we sort of start to piece together that he has to film himself every day and watch the film, and on camera he looks and sounds horrific. So there, you've got that picture of Dorian Gray thing going on, and that's why we saw him earlier watching his film, and he sounded like the Crypt Keeper on the video, and was sort of cringing at it. And also why he doesn't let himself get filmed, and when he's going on television to have this staged wedding with Phoenix, he's wearing this silver mask that entirely
and earlier in the movie, anytime it shows, like, it pans up to him and you see the people looking at him, like, he's in the dark, you don't see him.
Right,
like,
because he can't be filmed. And so Winslow's watching all of this, and then he burns the videos that are necessary for Swan to retain his eternal youth.
Oh, that's what's happening. Okay.
So those videos, the video thing is a little complicated because he has to keep making more videos.
Because I was thinking, like, well, how does he kill him at the end if he's under contract? Yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out.
In order for Swan to stay alive and youthful, he has to keep all the videos and watch them every day. So Winslow burns all the videos, and then we see this show. I found this last show so much creepier than like the darkness and Frankenstein and the undead and the thunder and lightning. I found this last show so much more disturbing and unsettling because it's this bright lit, it's this like super, super bright lit stage with these girls, these showgirls in these giant feathery.
Yeah. It looks like a Vegas show, sort of. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're all like pale white chorus girls, wearing black feathery black crow costumes. You know, like the big feathery chorus girl costumes, but they're all just black feathers like crows.
Yeah, it looks like it looks like a flamingo thing, but instead black instead of pink.
And they're all like doing this little dance to these drum beats. And there's like just kind of tubby shirtless guys passing spears back and forth. And this drum beat. And then there's like some bright colors on stage, and it looks like a really disturbing fever dream version of Laugh-In. And Swan comes on stage, and Phoenix is just like, and this is supposed to be like his wedding to Phoenix, and she is just wearing this sort of very ordinary, like flowy 70s lady, almost like not quite a muumuu, but like it's like she does not look like she's about to have a wedding or even be on stage. She looks like she looks like a therapist.
Yeah, and he's not actually getting married, right? Because he just got Philbin to play.
He says, he says, Philbin, you're going to be the priest, and Philbin is like, oh, I've never gotten to be a priest, and then Philbin's like dressed like a bishop on stage.
Yeah.
And it's
with sunglasses.
It's very weird. He looks like Jim Jones.
Yeah.
And so there's all this thing happening on stage. They're about to have this staged wedding, and Winslow shows up. And what is I'm blanking on this now. What does he do? Does he stab Swan?
It's like, okay, so someone has a gun that they're planning to shoot.
Oh, that's right. Because so Swan was gonna have Phoenix shot like right at the moment of the wedding, but the Phantom stops the gunman by like shoving the gun right as he fires, and so Philbin gets shot through the head instead.
Yeah. I just kept thinking, like, how long exactly does he expect to keep signing new talent with this shit? Like, there's a reason Death Row Records didn't exactly get an influx of talent the year after Tupac died. Yeah. You know what I'm trying to say?
And so Winslow then like leaps down onto the stage and attacks Swan, and Swan's mask comes off, and we see him now. Because his film's been destroyed, that we see him what he must have been looking like, and he doesn't even look like old. He looks like his face has been. He looks like somebody tried to shave his entire face with a vegetable peel. Like his face just like looks like strips of raw meat, and he's like, and he starts trying to strangle Phoenix.
Your eyes, I need your eyes,
and it's utter chaos, and the audience the whole time, much like with Beef's death. They just think this is all part of the show.
Right.
And there's this one guy. There is this one guy who looks like the chick from Die Antwoord. And he's like this shirtless guy with a blonde mullet who is just super excited. And I could not take my eyes off this guy.
And I remember being like, wait, were we supposed to know who that was?
He's just an extra in the audience who's super fucking excited and is like jumping up and down the whole time. I could not. This was like my third time watching the movie and my second time watching it in recent memory, and I could not stop watching this guy. I was like, wait, what is he doing? So it's utter chaos. Swan's flipping out and dying, and then of course Winslow, because Winslow has killed Swan and destroyed the videos. Now Winslow's stab wound reopens, and Winslow's dying. And
doing the similar crawl to what he did when he first became the Phantom.
He's crawling across the stage, and is Swan burning? I think that's why Swan looks like that. I think Swan is burning because the videos were burning. So Swan's like melting. And Winslow's like crawling, and Phoenix is like horrified, reeling back, and Winslow, his mask comes off, and so we see his record pressed face, and like one of his eyeballs is kind of like melted half out. And he's crawling across, and ends up and Phoenix at the last minute realizes that Winslow saved her.
Yeah. He crawls to the edge of the stage and you kind of see him just like pass out, and she just kind of has the realization of like he saved him and also maybe like who he actually is. Yeah. And the scene,
and you get that fucking ADR Winslow,
right? and
the most like, oh, I couldn't quite hear that in the recording. They just added that last second because you hear the room noise. Yeah. It's just like, it's like. Winslow. Like, it sounds so different than everything else.
I think I registered that as an intentional effect. Like he hears her saying his name and it drowns everything out. So I mean, you're probably right. You're probably right that was just
I'll buy that though. But I like that.
I mean, if it was unintentional, death of the author, whether Brian De Palma meant to do that, that's what happened. So
right, yeah.
We created that moment as an audience. But yeah, and then we get this aerial shot that actually, for all that we're saying, it is a very different movie from Rocky Horror, despite the inevitable comparisons. But that aerial shot, in a way, kind of reminds me of the insects crawling on the planet's face, and two, because it's you just see this utter chaos, and the music I think is still going, this like drum beat and
it has that sort of feeling of like like, I'm sure he didn't mean to specifically say, like, oh, modern 70s music is bad and of the devil. Like, I'm sure he's not, like, intentionally going for that. But it kind of gave me that feeling of, like, those, like, Dragnet episodes where they show, like, the hippies on drugs that are, like, awful and, it kind of has that look to it,
The audience is scary. The audience is, these people who just look like if they got a little more excited, they would literally like pull Phoenix apart and eat her. And like the end of Perfume.
And there's that level where I was like, and there's that level where it's like, oh, maybe it's an indictment of the audience, like, oh, look at this ravenous crowd and what they love. And earlier in the movie, Swan says like, the people want reality or something like that. So that's what I'm giving it to them. Like, they love this. And so it's like, you could say it's like, oh, it's what the people want, but also, like, Swan is specifically instigating and stoking this by specifically trying to, like, because he wanted someone else to die that night, right? Mm-hmm. Like, he wanted to heighten things, And so, like, it is partially on him that he's making this audience like this, Like, he wants that drama.
I did feel there was a slight kids these days,
right?
Kind of, especially after Beef dies and they're wheeling his body out on the stretcher and the whole sea of audience is still like chanting for Beef, thinking it was part of the performance or not even, or just knowing what they saw and still craving more. And it cuts to the inside the limo and Philbin is there with Swan, and Philbin is fucking shook from it. Like, he's the fucking audience insert. Right. He's just sitting there like, what the fuck did I just see? Like, a man just died on stage, and Swan just goes, yeah, it was quite the spectacle. And that was just it. Yeah. Like, he knows. He was like, yeah, it was a spectacle. The audience loved it. Right. Now what's next? Anyway.
It's like he's just a hunk of meat to them.
Yeah, but you also get the feeling that, like, if this was set in the 90s, it would be like the lead singer would die, and then he'd fall into the crowd, and he'd be crowd surfed around. It would be that joke,
Yeah. I mean, and
look at how mindless these teens are, like.
And
desensitized.
And the drugs are definitely, which again, I mean, you can like see it as sort of pearl clutching, but also the music executives making their people take drugs to make them perform. Wasn't wrong. And also like Phoenix, when we see the video of Swan getting Phoenix to sign her contract, she definitely seems high.
Yeah.
And I think it's implied because, you've got this sort of chain of Winslow and Phoenix signed with Swan and he signed with the Devil. And it seems that it's sort of this chain going back. And then when Swan's videos are destroyed, it seems that it has released Phoenix. So her soul is saved at the end, basically.
Kind of like Faust, the Margarita gets saved at the end, So,
yeah. And we don't... I like that it doesn't, as part of the fast pace overall of the movie, the ending doesn't drag either. There's no sort of wrap up or there's no
it just pulls back from the insane scene. And it's like,
there's no sort of epilogue moment. We don't see like 1 year later, here's Phoenix, and she's singing in a club, and she's doing better, or whatever. Like, it's just, no, like, you just have to imagine what's going on with them after all that.
Well, it ends like those old 50s movies where it's like the ba-dum-boom moment, and now the credits.
And then we get this super fun credit sequence. That's just clips from the movie with this song sung again by Paul Williams called "Good for Nothing, Bad in Bed." And I love
it's all about how after you're dead, no one's gonna care. It doesn't matter anyway.
Bad in bed, nobody hates you any better. Or no. Wait, what is it? Good for nothing, bad in bed. We all hate you and you're better off dead. Goodbye.
It's like so like
good.
Dark.
It's really, it's like this poppy, and it's got this little circus sounding like calliope.
Meanwhile, it's showing all like the best clips from the movie.
It's great. It is great, and the lyrics of the song also kind of like line up with the characters and the moments.
Yeah,
it's a fantastic ending. So yeah, I mean, I fucking love this movie. The soundtrack apparently got really big in Winnipeg. They have a festival. There's a Phantom Festival. And I heard this story from Brian De Palma that's like one of those inspiring artist stories where he said after he made this movie and it was such a flop and he felt like such a failure and he thought he was never going to have a career after that. And then he went to Mexico and this little Mexican boy came up to him clutching the soundtrack album and said, I love this movie so much. You're such an inspiration to me. Thank you for making this. You're a genius. And then it turned out that little boy was Guillermo del Toro.
And now you know the rest of the story.
And then Einstein clapped. But no, but Brian De Palma, but yeah, I mean, it's a movie that you can tell why it wasn't a commercial success.
Yeah.
But it is such.
It's so charming with how it's like it is such like it shows its budget in a way, but you're just like. But it's so creative with how they made these scenes pull off.
I think people love it for the same reason people love Rocky Horror Picture Show. And I love it. And I like, we talked about Rocky Horror. We did that. And I like Rocky Horror. I love Phantom.
Now, see, I still feel like I love Rocky Horror at the end of the day because the aesthetics for me are so much more like pulling in for me than this movie, which I still feel is good, but doesn't like grab me in the same way still that I feel like Rocky Horror does.
I mean, I can say in either case, I think we can all agree that both films are far superior to the other sort of cult circuit movie that's gotten big, The Room.
Oh, yes.
I tried watching it. I got it on DVD, and I was so excited. I once also got in a huge argument on Facebook over The Room that had nothing to do with its aesthetics, and just like arguing with somebody getting mad when I said that you can't stream The Room and you have to buy a DVD. Because, anyway, it's a whole thing. I got accused of mansplaining because I said The Room wasn't on Netflix.
Oh, okay.
But The Room is just bad, and it was made by a horrible person who can't do anything well,
and who got too much money in the first fucking place. Because as soon as you look back into it, it's like, this guy had like rich parents who were able to set him up with
like The Room was a movie made by a terrible person with no taste and way too much money.
Yes.
Whereas Rocky Horror, and it's boring. Like The Room is just bad and boring, and it really makes me kind of mad that people pay so much attention to it because it's like it's bad, like so what, whoop-de-doo. Whereas Phantom and Rocky Horror both, it's like they're like kind of schlocky,
like and they're campy,
but they're not bad.
And I think like the charm of it is in aid of something that is deeper happening within the narrative, right? Because the music also in Phantom is like genuinely super fun, and I think even though it's like with the song at the beginning of the Beef song, Somebody Super Like You, the lyrics are weird and quirky and kind of off and a little off, but like it's still a fun song. And I think so many people, like, they look at this camp stuff and they're like, oh, people like it because it's bad. And it's like, no, it's not bad. It's just not slick. Yeah, it's not fitting to this idea of what an aesthetic representation in, like, film is supposed to look like, right? In that same way that, like, abstract avant-garde, shit, and like French New Wave isn't doing the conventional things that you expect. Now they're doing it for a more directly, smarty art reason, but like they're breaking the convention not just because they don't know what they're doing, but because there's something else that they're thinking about, like with Rocky Horror, the music and like the queer representation and things like that. You know what I'm saying? Like there's more going on than just, oh, this is bad on purpose,
Yeah, because it's not, like, Brian De Palma was not sitting there going, I'm gonna make a bad movie. Yeah. He made a movie he clearly wanted to make because nobody asked him to do this.
Yeah, this had a lot of ambition.
And that's what's so great is this was not a movie that he sat down and going, what would be really marketable? What would really sell to an audience right now? Like, this was just the passion is so clearly there. Muse, what do you think? I feel like it's so easy for us because we're sitting next to each other.
Right.
So, Muse, what do you think?
I feel like if this movie was marketed better at the time, I feel like this could have been right up there with a Rocky Horror, especially with the way, like, audience interaction. Like, I think people would be talking about this movie as much. I think it's almost apples and oranges to compare them as movies because of the style, but I think just as a cult classic from that time period and just how it's just drenched in camp and that general aesthetic, that I think people would have resonated with this movie as much with a Rocky Horror, and it wouldn't just kind of be a kind of forgotten film for the most part. Like, I don't think it really gets talked about. It's not as big in the discussion as like a Rocky Horror or even like a fucking Shock Treatment gets probably brought up more than this.
Well, but to that point, like, because I feel like those are framed more specifically like musicals that people who are into the specific musical aesthetic like would enjoy more, right? Like, you're gonna gravitate towards that because this looks like a movie made by someone who's making a big fun musical in mind, as opposed to this movie, which like still feels like a movie, but it has the musical elements on it. You know what I'm trying to say? Like I was trying to say earlier.
Well, it doesn't have that, it
doesn't have like the big dance number where like, oh yeah, everyone's going to want to do this part.
Well, and it also just, from a strictly formal point of view, Phantom of the Paradise is kind of not a musical. Like, it's technically, it sounds weird to say it's clearly not realism because, there's deals with the devil and all that, but in terms of whether it's a musical or not, it's realism, ignoring the fantasy elements. It's realism because the characters don't burst into song the characters sing for reasons that people would actually sing in real life.
Yeah, it's not to illustrate just an emotion that you're having.
And that's fine. I mean, I don't hate musicals, but I also love this movie and don't need it to be a musical.
Yeah, for sure. But no, I was just saying, like, probably the reason why I didn't catch on, because it doesn't frame itself like it's a musical. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. And so I could see it being harder to catch on because it doesn't have that element that looks like, oh yeah, this is the big, like, damn it, Janet. Like, there's no number that looks like the big fun thing where everyone's moving around like that. You know what I mean? There's no, let's do the time warp. You know what I'm saying?
It's not a musical. It's a movie. Yeah. It's a movie about music.
That's very true. Yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
But
it's a strong recommendation for me though. If you're like me and you've just kind of heard about it in passing, but you've never really given it the time of day, never actually sat down and watched it. Man, when I say it's an hour and 30 minutes and it fucking flies by.
It's super,
it really
doesn't feel
it doesn't even feel its length at an hour 30. It fucking blows by. I love the pacing of it. We've talked about it on Going Off sometimes on how, like, movies feel like they have to be a specific way to be a movie and that it needs to be so fucking descriptive. And the way this just cuts out all of the unnecessary shit and gives you exactly what you want. They know you've seen what the Phantom looks like. They know you want to see that costume.
Right.
Let's fucking get to it as quickly as we can, not padding it at all. And it really makes you feel for the characters. I don't know if I necessarily sympathized with Swan at all once you kind of realize that he is also, like, he is indebted also, like, And like I said, like, I felt more for Beef than I did
I know Beef
for
didn't
Winslow.
Do anything.
Yeah.
He didn't do anything wrong.
He was a musician.
Beef tried to get out twice, and still, like, they forced his hand.
All Beef did was
and
his job, which was to sing.
Right.
He was a true professional. He realized what he needed to
Right.
do, and he died for the music, like the song from the beginning.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yep,
justice
just
for
like
Beef.
Eddie.
Maybe the movie was all about beef.
Maybe.
Is all I'm
I
saying.
think we need Beef was wronged.
Yeah, we need
Beef
his
was
backstory.
We need a beef-centric 2021 reimagining.
Where he was a struggling artist just trying to make his way.
You know what? A Beef prequel. I would totally watch a Beef prequel by Brian De Palma.
A beef-quel.
A Beef-quel. I want it. Like because,
Phantom of the Beef.
Or what if he isn't really dead and they were wrong and he survived the burning and now he's a burnt beef.
Oh yeah.
He's
Shit,
crispy
well
beef.
done.
He's well done. He's brisket. This
Print it.
This has been the review of New Going Out Crossover, ladies and gentlemen. I think that's a good place to end it, right?
Oh yeah.
If you
Can't do better than
if
that.
you want to, follow us and whatever we're doing, you can look in the wherever the fuck the social medias are where this is. I'm sure you'll be able to see it.
They're in the description, regardless.
All the descriptions, wherever the fuck they are. Look, they're there.
Can't click with my ears.
Where you look, that's where they are.
That's right. So thank you for listening for this special episode, the review anew. What did we say earlier? The review off, the going anew.
The going anew.
Yeah. 2021 and forever. Take it over for the 21 and the
For the
22.
22 season. Mues and RC and Nevin.
100 episodes.
Going anew.